Good evening to all our listeners and viewers of the NDC Heartbeat program. We have a special episode tonight. We are going to be chatting with some rather distinguished guests. We have two in studio and we have two online. We're going to be introducing these individuals very shortly. We're going to be talking about analyzing the budget. That's what we're going to be talking about, analyzing the budget. So we'll be back with you in a moment and we'll get going with this conversation. Welcome back to the NDC Heartbeat program. We have in studio with us Mr. Aaron Moses, no stranger, of course, to lots of you out there, and Kennedy Roberts, another individual, of course, who is no stranger to you out there. And online, we have Dr. Tessa Sincere, and also we have Mr. Chris DeRiggs. What I will do is just ask all individuals to just give just a 10-second introduction of themselves so you know who they are. So we start off first of all with Tessa Sincere. Dr. Sincere, please give us just a short intro and then we get the ball rolling.
Good evening, Terry. Good evening to my esteemed colleagues on Zoom, Chris, and in studio, Mr. Moses, and my dear friend Kennedy. Good night, viewers and listeners. My name is Tessa Sincere, as introduced, caretaker for St. Andrew Northeast and former senator, opposition senator. I think that's as brief as I can be. Terry, how is that for you?
Okay, all right. Okay, I'll accept that for the moment. And we also have on Zoom Mr. Chris DeRiggs. Chris, are you hearing us okay?
Yes, I'm hearing you loud and clear.
Wonderful, fantastic. Could you just give just a minute or so introduction so our listeners locally and abroad know who you are?
Well, I am most known in Grenada for theatre. I'm the artistic director of Heritage Theatre Company. But I have done other things. At one time, I was the Minister for Health in the People's Revolutionary Government. I was the executive director of the Grenada Chamber of Industry and Commerce for 13 years. And more recently, director of private sector development in the Ministry of Finance. So I think that pretty much sums up where I'm coming from tonight.
Great, wonderful. Thank you very much indeed. We'll get right back to you all very shortly. And in studio with me, we have Mr. Kennedy Roberts. Kennedy, just give us a brief intro.
Greetings. I'm a health economist, health policy specialist, also a chef. But tonight we're going to be talking the budget. As an economist, I'll be dealing into something. As a social sector economist specifically, I'll be looking at a lot of these people-oriented programs.
Great. And you wouldn't say to the public that you are an ardent farmer. That's okay.
Oh, well.
Aaron Moses.
Yes, sir.
Man of all parts, many parts, please.
Well, you just introduced me. Anyway, good night, colleagues and all the listeners around the world. I am Aaron Moses, good citizen. Both public and private sector background, president of the chamber, served in the Senate, policy advisor, consultant.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, well, we're going to get going. And Tessa, I hope you don't mind, but we'll be starting off with you. And essentially, there's been, as everyone knows, our Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, delivered his maiden budget presentation. What are your thoughts?
Thank you, Terry. I just knew I was going to be first because of the ladies first, right?
Indeed.
I think the Honorable Prime Minister did a very, very good job of presenting his maiden budget statement to the nation. I think he did a good job. It was well laid out. It was comprehensive. He explained each pillar that the government wishes to focus on in this upcoming year quite nicely. And I was very pleased to hear what the projections are for the upcoming year.
Great, fantastic. Chris, we'll ask you the same question, and the same question will go to my panelists also in studio. What are your thoughts? What hit you right in the face?
Well, I had the privilege of sitting and listening throughout the 3 hours plus presentation. It was a very rewarding experience for me. I believe that the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance did a very good job in presenting a budget that measures up to what I consider to be some of the key elements of a budget. You know, looking like, a statement of policies. That's one of the first things a budget should do. The identification of programs that give expression to these policies. A laying out of expenditure figures and looking at implementation of these programs that would apply to the figures. And then identifying some management responses or institutional arrangements that would ensure implementation. So I think that in terms of the elements of budget, the presentation by the Prime Minister satisfies these criteria. I was particularly pleased to see that he couched his presentation in a policy framework that was consistent with the policies that were articulated by him and other leaders of the party in the campaign period. So that when he identified 6 or so areas that would form the strategic framework for his presentation: health, education, agriculture, culture and the creative economy, energy, the environment. I was very pleased to see that it represented a consistent trajectory from the campaign to the parliament. So that was good to see. And as an artist, I was very pleased to see, for the first time in the history of Grenada, there's a budget presented and the creative industries are flagged as a key area of focus, and a budget actually was identified for such a sector. So it gives me heart, it gives me encouragement. But there are other areas of diversification and growth that were pleasing to my ears. So I think it was a good presentation, and it was a source of a lot of optimism. Those who listened objectively and carefully. That's what I have to say.
Great, wonderful analysis. Kennedy, what were your thoughts? What jumped out at you?
Thank you, Terry. And one of the things that really highlighted the budget for me was the focus on people, the focus on relating with the community, with relating to the people of Grenada. The fact that a lot of the budget focus on consultation, focus from prior to the budget is based on the feedback of the people, and that integrated people's approach was significant. The other point that I thought was very important is the intersectoral way in which the budget was presented. The linkages between tourism, agriculture, education, health, the way health is, they talk about the primary health care, which is about pulling people at the community level to address the health needs of communities. The focus on the fact that health and wellness is top priority, that gave me a lot of reassurance that, listen, we are on the right track. So I think the integrated approach, the systems thinking approach, the people-centered approach, I think that's a good way to really frame the budget.
Great, wonderful indeed. Aaron, your thoughts?
Well, from a process perspective, I think the budget delivery, the environment, the content, all contributed to what I'll call a breath of fresh air. Having the audience and the Grenadian public at large engaged for 3 hours plus is a tremendous achievement. And I think that defines the content, the delivery, and the focus of the budget. I don't want to repeat what was said before, but I think the statement of revenue and expenditure really gave true meaning to the articulated development philosophy of the party that was elaborated on during the campaign. And what it does, that budget did, was to give teeth to exactly what the party outlined. And essentially, it focused on fiscal sustainability, debt sustainability, and it gave specific direction as to how the transformative agenda will be implemented. It was very comprehensive in that it touched on all what I described as the strategic imperatives, the 6 strategic imperatives that are outlined to take Grenada forward in the ensuing decades. And virtually every sector was addressed.
Yep.
He spoke to the gaps that existed, the pain points in the society, such as health and the challenges there. He spoke to the major challenge that this country has been experiencing in the last decade, which is the deep implementation deficit, where very little productive activities were happening. He spoke about the issue of efficiency and the need for productivity. The budget reflected considerable care, and contrary to a lot of what I heard today, it is a people's budget. Mm-hmm. It addressed the major challenges that the society are confronting now. Food price-driven inflation. It addresses the unemployment challenges post-COVID.
Right.
So I think it was a rather comprehensive and well-delivered exercise that I just say the majority of the Grenadian public appeared, based on the comments, what I've been hearing, quite satisfied.
Well, indeed. Thank you very much. Based on comments, social media, radio, television, diaspora, it was a great budget.
Definitely.
Now, it has been dubbed, this budget has been dubbed a people's budget with a transformational agenda. What are some of the areas of transformation, would you say, kind of stood out at you? And Tessa, I'll be coming at you on this second rounds. This budget was dubbed by many, locally, regionally, and our Grenadian folks in the diaspora. A people's budget with a transformational agenda. What would you say were some of the transformational aspects of this budget that really stood out to you?
Thanks again, Terry. I must say that there were quite a few areas that stood out to me. And the first I think everybody would expect me to mention is that pillar that speaks to prioritizing health and wellness. I think that was, excellently presented. It stood out to me because as a senator, we spoke to this issue, particularly as it relates to the nurses and giving them that sense of appreciation, where we heard, all sorts of things being said about the nurses and so on. And here we have a prime minister who presented a budget, an inspiring budget, a budget that gives hope to our health professionals, and in particular at this point, the nurses. And while I can appreciate that some may say, oh, this, that, the next, about, giving them that $500 honorarium on their salary for 12 months, some may think that's nothing. I believe it sets the ground for other benefits, other things to come as we move forward, as we continue on this transformational agenda. So I think that was one of the areas that stood out to me. Then upgrading of the health facilities. The Prime Minister mentioned that there would be about 5 million budgeted for the phase 1 of a new hospital project next year. And I don't see how this cannot be a transformation in terms of our healthcare system when we look at what we have currently, right? He also mentioned upgrades across the health facilities, across the Tri-Island states, including as Kennedy, I hope you don't mind me referring to you as Kennedy, as Kennedy had, mentioned in his introduction, facilities across the nation, introducing that systems approach, introducing primary healthcare teams, strengthening the primary healthcare access and delivery. This is where it starts. We start at the community level to get our health system in order. The Prime Minister also mentioned mental health, and for some reason, Terry, and I don't want to take up all of the time speaking here, but mental health has been relegated to that back burner for so long.
You're sure
we keep
right.
hearing mental health, mental health, mental health. We have a mental health day, and that is important. But when it comes to the real mental health issues and people articulating their situations, we still exist in a very taboo environment, which, kind of hold back people from expressing what they're going through. So promoting mental health, I think, as part of that pillar is very, very important. And the Prime Minister did mention that there will be an integrated project. There will be definitive steps taken to addressing the entire, this whole issue of mental health. In fact, he mentioned $500,000 being made available via the estimates of revenue and expenditure for Carlton Home, right? The refurbishment or rehabilitation, re-emphasis on the Carlton Home. And again, I think that is a very transformative step to take. And before I give my colleagues an opportunity, and this is just my take on one area, there are other areas that I can mention. National health insurance, $1.9 million to re-engage the JIPA network and to move forward with the implementation of national health insurance. A total allocation of $114.2 million is allocated to the Ministry of Health, Wellness, and Religious Affairs. So I see some very definitive steps being taken as it relates to health and wellness, and I'm very, very much appreciative of that move by the administration to focus heavily on the health of a nation. We cannot keep saying that our health is our wealth, but we're not taking the necessary steps to ensure that it is just that.
Well, thank you very much, Tessa, for these rather valuable points which you have raised. And before I get to you, Chris, let me just encourage all those who are on the NDC online platform, please share the live. And we extend a very warm welcome to all of those of you who are on WeFM, Vibes FM, and Spice Capital Radio. So, Chris, same question. What stood out for you in this matter?
Okay, well, I line up behind Tessa's comments with regard to the health sector. The prospect of us having a replacement hospital with teaching facilities gives us the opportunity to make exponential growth. And what by that I mean strategically, to leverage the presence of St. George's University in collaboration with this particular project, the new hospital, in order to take the transformational agenda forward. If you want to transform the productivity of a nation, you have to start with the health of the nation. So there are all kinds of dividends to be achieved with this particular project. I also would like to see, with respect to health, a corresponding program for the improvement of the human resources to match the new physical plant. And I know that, you know, the new Minister for Health is giving a lot of attention to those kinds of thinking. But for me, from where I stand, I have a particular engagement with the creative arts. And as I said in my introduction, it's the first time that any government has flagged the creative industries as a legitimate sector to be pursued for development. Now, we know that our economy has undergone transition. It is well established that the commodity exports don't represent a viable option for us if we want to develop Grenada. And that was, you know, established long ago, decades ago. And while we are seeking to reimagine these commodities that we produce for value-added potential, and while we are seeking to milk them in a reimagined way for their macroeconomic contributions, I believe that it is a very encouraging thing that we're looking at fresh new approaches with respect to the service sector. And this is where the creative arts come in. The creative arts encompass the work of artists who are involved in creating goods, who are creating services, and who will benefit from the intellectual property. So I am very excited at the possibility that there is going to be a creative arts office, an office for creative arts. There's going to be a strategy for the development of the creative arts. I am very excited that, you know, we are looking to the possibility of people who are talented being given opportunity to make a living from their God-given skills and abilities in a manner that was not present before. And I would expect that the new government, will roll out a policy that is embraced by the artists. So they will have a sense of ownership of such a program. And it will result in a comprehensive series of facilitation on the part of the government, not just limited to fiscal incentives, tax breaks for creative efforts, but also extending to the point where the government can open doors, can act as a bridge so that people can get a hand up to connect with those operators in the global creative industry who can help our artists to go forward and do well and tell our stories globally, produce our films globally, market our books, our plays, our music globally. It's great that for the first time in our history, you know, that the government is actually putting on the agenda in a formal way in the budget the development of the creative arts sector. This is transformational.
Absolutely so indeed. And it's catching on regionally, I may add. Kennedy, your thoughts on that matter?
Terry, I will start off where Tessa left off with health, and Chris mentioned it also. But in addition, I wanted to emphasize the issue of national health insurance a little more. Because for many years, from 2017, 2016, we heard the government at the time talking about implementing now. I remember in the 2018 election, I made it clear to the Grenadian people that that administration was brambling us. They were not fully aware of what it would entail to implement such a health financing program. And now with the discussion with Dr. Kestenet and the JIPA organization, the target is for early 2025. So I expect over the next year and a half, the issues of proper consultation, the issues of linking with the National Health Insurance and National Insurance Scheme for the proper identification of people so that when they access services, the data can be recorded in an efficient manner. So I think the National Health Insurance Program is one that in this next couple of years, we will definitely see some serious movement. However, I also wanted to highlight the importance of the school health program and the food and nutrition component of the primary, secondary school programs. And that is a critical element in terms of addressing the generational improvement in health status. Another aspect that is affecting a lot of Grenadians is the state of the buildings, the government buildings with mold. I had the opportunity to visit the financial complex, and there are literally a floor where people cannot work. There are several areas in the ministerial complex that is creating problems, and it is affecting the health of workers, it's affecting productivity, and the whole occupational health component of the government buildings. And I understand a lot of private sector buildings to have this problem of mold, and that's going to be addressed. But I think that the tourism component of the budget is building on the previous administration, because I know there are a lot of programs with regards to British Airways and Sunwing and Condor and American Airlines having additional airlift to Grenada. Is not something that happened in the last few months. Right. And I know it's so we have to acknowledge that the last administration did put some things in place that we're building upon. The whole issue of the social protection program. The NIS is an organization that has been going through some difficult times, and the previous administration failed to implement some of the recommendations. So I think it is a very bold move that the government has decided to implement the recommendations of the actuary with regards to increasing the age of retirement over time to 65 and gradually increasing the contribution rates, because that is critical to the sustainability of the NIS. The housing program, getting the Chinese houses to the people, and installing cabinets and bedroom closets and so on is an important element in getting the houses ready for the people. And finally, I can't help but acknowledging the importance of Carriacou and Petite Martinique, how they have been given an additional set of resources to address the ministerial complex in Carriacou, the Windward fish market, the lighting of the jetty in Petite Martinique, really looking at reducing the amount of diesel used to generate electricity and taking a more sustainable approach through solar. And so I think these are some important elements of giving Carriacou and Petite Martinique that extra boost to ensure that whatever is accessible on the mainland is also accessible in Carriacou and Petite Martinique.
Absolutely. Thank you. Brother Aaron, your closing remarks on that item.
Well, if you look at any of the strategic imperatives, there are significant transformational issues there. If you take the question of energy transition, and the environment, as you know, we are fuel-based energy at this particular point. Yeah. And energy constitutes the largest single item in our import bill of $400 million US, where we have a significant trade deficit and we only export 34 million. So any serious government will attempt to reverse that. And the extent to which we can utilize and maximize alternative energy will always be a significant transitional policy move. Right. We understand that we have preliminary indications that we have geothermal capacity, wind capacity, as well as what's already utilized, or solar. And so the budget informs an investment, particularly in the geothermal, which is a long-term thing. It takes a while, maybe a decade to get there. So funds were allocated to begin the process of the first drilling of the first exploratory well and the infrastructure to support that.
Right.
Then pursuing the feasibility of having wind turbines located out in the sea where the wind are higher. So this is a very bold move. We are aware of it, but the move towards it was particularly slow because of the challenge we had with the existing Grenlec owners and the government that in some respects stymied the move towards solar. And so the bold move now to address that becomes more important now that we have paid significantly and dearly to reacquire the shares of Grenlec. And we now stuck with a company that did not benefit from significant investments in their plant. And so it is very expensive, negatively impacting our flexibility.
Right.
For the first time, maybe in the last 25 or so years, the Grenadian public are now subjected to now and then, a few blackouts, something that we never appreciated or remembered as one of the downsides of that particular business. If I go to education and training, as you know, the major challenge we have in our educational system is the mismatch between the output and the requirements of our productive sectors to move forward.
Yeah.
Where the education or training that our young people are exposed to render them, unfit to face the job market at this particular time. So we obviously have to re-engineer what we do and focus on skills, something we did pretty well 30 years ago when we went to school. And so that requires considerable investment. And I think the government have boldly indicated and allocated tremendous resources to assist our ongoing educational institutions. I don't know how many Grenadians have been paying attention to the challenges that TAMCC has been going through in the last few years. And we see some bold initiatives, particular World Bank loan, if I recall, with 14 or 15 million US that should be used to enhance the capacity, the physical infrastructure, and the delivery of education at the TAMCC level. Most importantly, the linkages to the Carriacou and Sates, as well as Maribo campuses, and integrate that into a seamless delivery of our education. The issue of the new areas such as coding. So those things were addressed. So virtually in every strategic imperative, there are significant transformative initiatives that are outlined. If you look at the question of agriculture and the marine industry, as you know, agriculture has been de-emphasized for quite a long time. We, as you know, traditionally we had commodities of cocoa and nutmeg. We are the second largest producer of nutmeg in the world. We failed badly to rebuild and resuscitate the nutmeg industry post-Ivan. And it's now, 18 plus going years. Could you imagine if we had the massive replant and what could have happened? But more importantly, the move towards value added that has started by a number of local entrepreneurs. And we should have been far away along the route, of addressing those things. We see the move and the demand, and the world cannot satisfy the demand for chocolates.
Well, actually, Jamaica is now competing with us now with nutmeg.
They've been trying to do it for quite a while. St. Vincent have been planting, St. Lucia have been planting. So we have
Jamaica has been planting.
We have really lost the initiative. I mean, I had the good fortune of managing forestry for a while in the revolution, and there are 138 workers. And when they explained to me what happened, within 1 year, they were able to replant the forests and nutmeg production. We failed to do that. We wasted a lot of resources. We did not rebuild the productive capacity. But in addition to that, the whole question of food security and our ability to feed ourselves. We consume a lot of imported stuff. The hotel plan, the linkages are very important. The move towards health and wellness. A lot of Grenadians are beginning to eat healthier. Yeah. So there is a need for fruits and vegetables. And we still not in a position to provide all that is required. So specifically, the budget addresses that. And it points out a number of root crops like white potatoes. We import a significant quantity of white potatoes. And there are varieties that can be produced. As you know, Jamaica is now 85%, self-sufficient in the production of white potatoes within 10 years. Yep. And they chose that commodity when we chose manioc, right? And did not do a good job of it. So it specifically is going to put resources into making some interventions to address some of our
and bold
immediate
interventions
and interventions that we have not seen, because that requires support. Yeah. And if you look at Minister Andrew's presentation today, where he outlined, for instance, there were 5 senior positions within the Ministry of Agriculture that have been vacant. No leadership.
For a long time.
So there's quite a lot in there.
Yep. Well, let us move on to the other item, which is a number of food items have been 0 rated. Then you also had a tax amnesty for 1 year. Then you have a reduction in the Grenlec bill. And you have the agenda of renewables, which you touched on. What are your thoughts, Tessa, on the basket of 0 rated food items, the increase in alcohol, and touch as a health professional on the issue of sugar, which individuals are making fun over? Talk about the seriousness that it has upon our health as a people, and touch a bit on the tax amnesty for 1 year. I think the Minister of Finance mentioned that there are some $600 million outstanding in taxes, and that this amnesty over 1 year will be given so that individuals could start a program of payment. And then you had the reduction in Grenlec bill. Touch a little bit on all of these which were presented at the budget.
Thanks again, Terry. I would start with my preferred topic. Let's talk about the basket of 0 rated items, because I too have seen much fun being made of a very serious matter. It may appear as if these are just some items that, the Prime Minister or his cabinet sat and put together. And really and truly, they are not just vicarious items that were selected. We have to start somewhere, and we have to understand the importance of eating healthy. So let me start with the issue of the sugar and adding, that tax to the sugar of 15%, I think it is. And people are saying, oh, well, and I listened to the opposition leader's presentation today, and I said, wait, what? Is a poor man that is going to suffer, and so on. So basically, I listened, and what I was hearing is that, well, poor people can, and I'm using poor because I hate the words poor and vulnerable. I prefer to always refer to persons in maybe a resource-strapped situation, or maybe, a situation where they're in need of something, as opposed to poor and vulnerable. But anyways, that is that. Sugar, the amount of sugar we consume. Transformation also means transforming our mindset. Transformation means transforming our lifestyles, and we must begin somewhere. So I heard that is a poor man when the sugar tax has been added. That is the poor man that is going to feel it, and X and Y and Z. And I couldn't understand why such a point was being made without understanding the correlation, the link to our productivity, to our health, and the burden that is going to put on our health system down the road, upstream, downstream, and Mr. Roberts can speak to that even more eloquently than I do. Diabetes, non-communicable diseases, chronic diseases, lifestyle diseases. This is where our burden of disease lie in Grenada. And we need to understand that it begins with us with a small step, reduction in our sugar intake. If we keep sugar as a zero-rated item, people will feel free to buy as much as they can with a VAT added to it, or with it being added to a VATable item, right? Or a VATable list of items. It means then that people start rethinking what they buy. We would not consume as much sugar if we cannot purchase as much sugar. Then we have the issue of the sugary drinks. I've always had an issue with that. I've always had an issue with that. And in fact, the Prime Minister and I had a conversation about that even before he got elected. You know, he called and he said, Tessa, I want to speak to you about this issue. And I said to him, if we are serious about health, we will have to take and make some unpopular decisions. And getting people to reduce their sugar intake is an important step. Now, I'm saying this because I understand it. My father was diabetic. And because of diabetes and him having all the related issues, he had to be amputated. And I'll take it even further home. I was the one who had to sign in the hospital, right? For my father's leg to be amputated, diabetes. And people have to understand that if you're already predisposed to diabetes and other lifestyle diseases, that there are some serious changes, behavioral changes that must occur. And reducing your intake is part of it. Now, government has a responsibility. Mr. Roberts will tell you, there is a concept that we teach in public health that is called a governmental presence at all levels. We cannot, ought not to leave the decision solely up to individuals and families. The government must step in and put some policies in place to ensure our health, right?
Right.
When we think about the days that we are going to lose, days lost equals money lost, non-productivity.
All right.
And people might be thinking, well, why are we discussing this as a budgetary item? But it has to be taken into consideration because we hear all the noise, we hear all the concerns about our health system, and we do not seriously step back and say, how can I contribute to reducing that burden on our health system?
Right. Well, thank you very much, Tessa. Time is quickly advancing, so let me go to Chris and ask him to respond to the item of the tax amnesty and the reduction in the Grenlec bill come next year.
Well, I want to speak about the tax amnesty because I was around at the Ministry of Finance when the previous tax amnesty under the previous NDC administration was extended. And at that time, it was an amnesty on interest and penalties. Some businesses utilized the amnesty, others did not. In fact, some did not even want to pay the principal. The point is this, however, a tax amnesty is good for businesses, especially businesses that are struggling. And I'm sure that institutions like the Chamber of Commerce and other private sector organizations will welcome this. So what I would like to see done is beyond the amnesty, some kind of a more expansive series of interventions to improve the lot of the private sector. And so the Prime Minister and Minister for Finance outlined a number of measures that are being implemented, one of which is to review the fiscal incentive framework affecting businesses and so on, investment, with a view towards leveling the playing field between foreign investors and local investors. I think that's a big one. And a number of things, but I want to see, beyond the tax amnesty, I want to see a more extensive program of engagement with the private sector. And indeed, there have been a number of points have been advanced by the Minister for Finance. If we had time in the discussion, I'd have gone into a more extended discussion about how we can grow the private sector in Grenada, because all that is good for employment and diversification and growth. But with respect to the tax amnesty, yes, it's good, and maybe I'll defer to another colleague of mine. Like maybe Aaron might want to discuss the whole question of the Grand Lake electricity issue, because he had been talking about that a short while ago.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Chris. Well, then we'll just skip over to Aaron, and you've not gotten off the hook yet, Kennedy. Aaron, the issue of the reduction in the Grand Lake bill and renewables. What are the correlations there, and how do we plan to move forward with that?
Well, I think it's a demonstration of care. Governments around the world are actively seeking to find ways and means of how they can ease the burdens, the inflationary in particular burden, for their citizens. So I think the efforts to reduce the cost of electricity to the rank and file and indeed all citizens is certainly will be a welcome one, one that will deliberately have an impact on the finances.
Right.
There's a lot that has been offered in this budget that can directly impact the cost of living on the citizens. And that is barring the revision of the basket of goods. I heard my colleague reference it in Parliament today, but I think in my observation, there have been significant changes in the basket of goods in the last decade. Where are people spending the money? What is represented there? And there are some concerns. And I think, in my view, expenditure on communication and entertainment has gone up significantly.
Oh, yeah.
And the extent to which people are cognizant of those changes and what is it they're doing that requires some behavioral change if we are to understand and fully appreciate what are the things we need to do to transform Grenada, to enhance our future prospects and to drive sustainability. And as Tessa said, it's about mindset.
Yep.
But changing that is about leadership.
Absolutely.
From an organizational point of view, the leader that drives and influences culture. So the extent to which you can have a vision and understand what are the things that are good for your society and to influence and take supportive policies that can drive those initiatives, to a large extent will determine your success. And it's unfortunate that we have serious policy issues being minimized and abused in terms of not articulating to the public the potential and benefits of those things we do. Now, how could one deride the attempt to push your citizens into healthy behaviors? How could one interpret a 0.5% increase on something that has no meaningful benefit, something that is damaging to your individual health, and to suggest that you'll have a significant rise in smuggling, in my view, the policies was well thought out and it was sending signals, because you could have increased taxes 2 and 3% on those particular items, but that was not done. And that's why I think if we're serious about transforming this country and to get away from that tired, unnecessary approach of going round and round in circles and not making any meaningful change towards the circumstances of our citizens, is getting us anywhere.
Absolutely.
And this budget represents a very bold attempt at changing the way we do things, at attempting to derive different outcomes that could enhance our revenue base or level of productivity. And with that, we'll have more resources to deliver on the range of things that our citizens desire to enhance their lifestyle. As you know, just like in any business, there are always competing demands. And there's always challenges to satisfy some of those demands. You can't do all. So the extent to which you can incrementally make those shifts and push in a particular direction that could enhance our overall well-being, because essentially the central platform of the NDC has been and continues to be putting people first.
Absolutely.
And this is what this budget is about, people-centered transformation.
Yep.
And so from that perspective, there is synergies, there are correlations, there are relationships. And if you understand the budget and you read it properly, it is a symbiotic production that is targeted at achieving the goals.
Thank you.
That's our outline.
Thank you. Thank you for those very valuable comments, sentiments. Kennedy, let me switch to another topic, because the budget spoke about a social partners committee, including the trade unions, the churches, the private sector, the youth. What are your thoughts on that, on the establishment of such a committee?
Again, it falls in line with the whole issue of consultation, partnering with different sectors of the economy to ensure that there's a transparent approach to the governance of the country. I get the impression that it would not be a symbolic committee to say that you're consulting, but there would be some meaningful contribution, meaningful decisions coming out of that committee that would lead to a consensus on the way forward. Because there are a lot of things that affect us, and coming back to the health sector, the importance of people having confidence in the community health system, for example, because a lot of Grenadians do not use our health centers because of lack of confidence. I am confident that in this next several years, the quality of health services being delivered at the community health facilities would be at a standard where Grenadians will feel more comfortable accessing care in those facilities. I also believe that the whole role of the civil service, the public services, is going to be reviewed to ensure that we have one civil service, that we have permanent secretaries and senior officials who are trained and committed and professional in terms of the delivery of their work. We want to see that the working conditions of the public servants are such that there's a level of confidence and motivation and productivity in the civil service. I wanted to also mention that in terms of the budget, as we come into the end, the issue of justice, the way in which our legal system has been neglected over the last several years, it is good to hear the Prime Minister talk about the halls of justice and the legal system being given some more attention. So I think generally, Terry, the coming together of the social partners to have dialogue with the government is a very significant point in terms of the consultation and the transparency. And you know, I think again of transparency with regards to the work done by the CBI funds. We have been not getting clear information over the last several years as to where your CBI funds are going. And to hear the Prime Minister talking about putting some into the public library and the hospital, these are some of the projects that I think will benefit from those sort of programs. So I'm confident that the wide range of issues being addressed in the budget is going to lead to a greater synergy among the social partners and Grenadians generally.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Kennedy. Well, time has quickly caught up with us, but we must take one final question, which I'd like each and every one of you just to give a few minutes to respond. The opposition leader's presentation today was a historical review of his performance, so
Definitely.
he claims. But what was really striking is that he indicated, and words to the effect, is that the budget does not correlate with the figures presented. But somehow he did not make mention of those figures which he spoke about. And secondly, he really did not respond to the budget. He gave a history lesson. So let me get your final thoughts. We start off with you, Tessa, on that matter.
Thank you again, Terry. Can I just make a statement as it relates to one particular thing? And I wish to do this with your permission, Terry,
Please.
as the host. As a youth parliamentarian facilitator, and I'm saying this, Terry, with no apologies, I was disappointed. I was appalled by the opposition leader's posture as it relates, his initial posture, as it relates to his responses to the Speaker of the House. And I had a session, prior to coming here, I had a session with a group of youth parliamentarians, and I had to say to them, this is unacceptable. I sat and I listened to the opposition leader's entire presentation. And when he got to the point, and I'm a bit animated about that because I'm disgusted really, that he would turn and respond to the Speaker of the House and challenge the Speaker of the House and go to the point of saying to the Speaker of the House, give me a chance.
Yep.
I have a serious problem with that. So that's my first thing as it relates to his delivery. Despicable.
Absolutely.
Nobody challenges, and he should know that because he referred to himself as the father of the house. Now, as the father of the house, he should know better than to challenge the Speaker of the House based on the standing orders. And I'm sure he's well versed in the standing orders. And I'm happy that the Speaker of the House was able to stand up and say to him that I'm not going to have that, maybe not in those words, but say to him that I'm not going to have this. Because it presents a challenge for me, Terry, when I'm doing these sessions with the young people who keep saying to me, but I see this on TV and I see our politicians doing this, and I see them doing that. And I have to keep saying to them, yes, you're saying these things, but they are not proper things to be done. The standing orders are clear. So let me say that. Secondly, as you correctly highlighted, I was looking for a bit more from the opposition leader as it relates to the content and the delivery of his presentation. I got an entire history lesson. And while I appreciate all of those details, I tried to make the connection to what was presented by our Honorable Prime Minister was what was presented in the estimates of revenue and expenditure. And I had a bit of a challenge doing this. So I was uninspired, to say the least, by the opposition leader's presentation. And I'll stop here.
Okay. Thank you very much indeed. We now go over to Chris. Your thoughts?
Well, when you stand on the floor of Parliament and you speak, you can either debate policies, or you could talk politics. And people have to decide why they are in Parliament. Are you there to educate and speak to a national audience? Are you talking to your political base? And I think that's the kind of question, that one would have to ask when listening to some politicians when they stand in Parliament. Just to hit a couple things quickly before we wrap up, I just want to say, Terry, that public education is critical, especially when you're introducing policies to hopefully change lifestyle. So I'm sort of recommending, and I'm sure Tessa will agree very strongly with me, that there should be an aggressive public education campaign to maybe in the form of a primary healthcare rollout to deal with the issue of diabetes and the correlation between diabetes and sweet, so that there be a greater embracing on the part of the general public of the measures with respect to the 15% VAT on sugar and other sweets. Now, finally, I think implementation is critical. It will determine how successful your policies, your programs are in their rollout. So while we are talking about new directions, I think new management styles are required. And in that regard, I will recommend to our government looking at the use of task forces as much as possible, with timelines and specially dedicated individuals to drive these implementation programs, because the period is short, and 5 years, 4 years is a short time in politics, and there's a lot to be done. There's an ambitious series of initiatives that have been identified, and I would like to recommend a new aggressive management style that will deal in a serious way with deadlines, measuring what has to be done and getting it done.
Thank you very much, Chris. Let me just add, as part of the sweets, as you indicated, alcohol also contains a lot of sugar. We now come to Kennedy on that matter.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was smiling because when I listened to the opposition leader today, I can see he still can't understand how they lost the election. He's still making reference to, yes, there was money left in the treasury, because he had hoped that he's coming back to spend it. And he is still baffled by the reality that a young team of who he called novices can come and get the people to support them. And this budget is one where I think the average Grenadian listening will be happy to hear the programs that have been outlined. And with the implementation ministry, the MIT, I'm convinced that there will be a increased focus on implementation and getting things done. And I'm confident that the Grenadian people will see the progress and give the government the support for us to move forward and really transform this country.
Great. Thank you, Kennedy. And Aaron, your thoughts on the opposition leader presentation today?
Well, 3 quick comments. I think it's rather unfortunate that even at this stage, he's struggling to define his legacy. And during his contributions, I kept looking to see if there was a big mirror on the wall, because essentially he spent a lot of time reflecting himself.
Yeah.
The things that he was accusing the budget of doing and not doing, most of it is characteristic of his leadership sojourn in Grenada. And so I found it very amusing, but I liked his end because I think maybe he was giving us an indication of what his next profession will be. We may have to refer him as to Reverend Dr. the Right Honorable.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed. Let me just close by saying that I thought the opposition leader had taken the opportunity to say to the Speaker and to the House, I've been here for 37, 38 years. I am the father of the House, and I wish to make myself available as a consultant, and I wish to assist and collaborate with this new administration, and to please call on me as the most senior member of this parliament for any assistance you may require. And consider me indeed, and remember me as the father. When you need help, I will give you support. Come and I will embrace you. That is the kind of message that I thought the opposition leader would had shared with, as he put it, young individuals.
I thought I knew the man. I thought you knew the man.
I thought so too.
You won't see that from me.
But anyhow, let me extend hearty thanks to Dr. Tessa Sincere for being on the program tonight. And Chris DeRiggs, thank you very much indeed. Kennedy Roberts, thank you. And of course, Aaron Moses. Thank you all so very much. And let me thank all those who have joined us on the NDC Facebook page, and indeed those who are on WeFM, Vibes FM, and Spice Capital Radio. Thank you all very much indeed. And this has been a special episode of The Heartbeat. We'll see you again
You're most welcome,
on
Terry.
Sunday. Have a great evening, or in fact, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you. Until
Have a
again.
good night,
Thank you very
everyone.
much. Thank you very much, Terry.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Being a pleasure.
Until next Sunday. Well, this Sunday, actually. Have a great night, everyone.